Hello and welcome to StudGenie classes. So far, we were delivering through recorded sessions to our students, but of late, StudGenie group understood the importance of live classes. So we have started analyzing to it, and now we are going to come up with live classes. We would be going live from December 5 onwards. For all the various details, you can log into our website studgenie.com and have a look by yourself about the various informations and the various live classes that are going to conduct. But in the meantime, we would keep you posted with all the recorded sessions of our classes, and we would be going to put all these recorded videos in our YouTube channel. As you can view it right now also, you can view all those recorded sessions in the YouTube channel itself, so that it could also benefit a wider section of students. Today, through this video, we would be beginning our polity section. As I have told you earlier, and I am also telling throughout wherever I say about polity, that if you are going to prepare from UPSC perspective and you are going to read Indian polity, M. Laxmikant is your Bible. Now, M. Laxmikant book on Indian polity, currently the 6th edition has been made available as well. It is the Bible for preparing Indian polity. No aspirant of UPSC must shy away from studying this book, Indian Polity, M. Laxmikant. Indian Polity, M. Laxmikant. Currently, the 6th edition has also been made available in the market. We would begin our polity section through the various historical acts that were framed by the British government in order to administer the British possessions in India during the Company rule, as well as after the British Crown took over by the British Parliament. The British rule mostly could be divided into three phases. From 1600 to 1765, and from 1765 to 1858, and from 1858 to 15th of August 1947. So, as you all know, the British came to India in 1600 as traders. From 1600 to 1765, the British were mere traders. We would look into them one by one, the phases, but in this video we would be discussing the British acts of relevance that were of significance, and somewhere or somehow they are connected to the present day Constitution of India. We would be looking into those acts from the period of 1600 till 1858. As we all know, after the Sepoy Mutiny or the First War of Independence in 1857, the British Crown assumed responsibility over the British possessions in India, and the Company rule was abolished. So all the acts thereafter, 1858 till 1947, the British left India and India gained its independence. Those acts you will discuss widely in modern history. Modern Indian history will be dealing with all those acts. In polity, we would be discussing all those acts of significance that were made from 1600 till 1850. So, beginning with 1600, the British arrived in India as traders and they operated merely as, and to 1765, the English East India Company, they were having an exclusive right of trading in India, exclusive right of trading in India, exclusive right as traders for trading in India by a charter granted to them by Queen Elizabeth I. Queen Elizabeth I of Britain had granted a charter to the English East India Company, ensuring the exclusive right of the company to trade in India and to function as traders. So, the English East India Company, following the order and the charter, they functioned merely as traders from the time period of 1600 to 1765. Then, from 1765 to 1858, we term it as the Company Rule. Why we term it as the Company Rule? In this period, the company not only remained as a mere trading company, but also it started looking after the political and socio-economic factors of the British possessions in India. It started acquiring lands, it started acquiring kingdom, and started its political affairs as well. Therefore, from the period of 1765 to 1858, we term it as the Company Rule. And from 1858 to 1947, in the backdrop of the Sepoy Mutiny or the First War of Independence, the British Crown assumed direct control over the British possessions in India, and the British Parliament started formulating acts, rules and regulations in order to govern and manage the territorial positions of British in India, and as a result the Company Rule was abolished from 1858. So now you would look into an interesting fact that how the English East India Company that arrived in India as mere traders started controlling the political affairs in India. Let's have. So, in 1764, you might have read in Modern Indian History, or you will read that event in Modern Indian History, that in 1764, Battle of Buxar happens. In 1764, Battle of Buxar happens and the English East India Company emerges victorious. The British emerged victorious in the Battle of Buxar that happened in 1764. Impressed by the British performance, Mughal Emperor, the then Mughal Emperor Shah Alam granted Diwani of British in the states of of Bengal, Bihar and Odisha. Hence, the company's rule as a territorial power began. What do you mean by Diwani? Diwani means right over revenue and civil justice. Mughal Emperor Shah Alam being impressed by the British performance in the Battle of Buxar of 1764, and he granted the British Diwani, that is the rights over revenue and civil justice over the states of Bengal, Bihar as well as Odisha. Hence, from 1765, the company rule in India began. The English East India Company, which was earlier functioning merely as traders, has now emerged as a territorial power controlling and administering the British possessions in India. Hence, the period of from 1765 to 1858 is called as the company rule, because the English East India Company was ruling over the British territorial possessions in India in that meantime. So in this video lecture, as I have mentioned earlier, we would be dealing that acts and the deals of the British East India Company were framed in the time period of 1765 to 1858 in order to govern the territories, or rather the British territories in India. So widely we would be discussing 4 of the important acts. Those are: number 1, the Regulating Act of 1773. Then we would be discussing the Pitt's India Act of 1784. After that, we would discuss the Charter Act of 1833, and the last one that we are going to discuss in this video is the Charter Act of 1853. These 4 acts, as you can see from their framing, they were framed in between the time period of 1765 to 1858. As I have mentioned earlier, this time period is also known as the company rules, because in this period of time, the British Crown has not assumed the direct responsibility of governing and managing the British possessions in India. Hence, the political affairs of the British possessions or the British territories of India were also managed by the English East India Company. So we would be looking at them one by one. To begin with, we will begin with the Regulating Act of 1770. So now let's begin with the Regulating Act of 1773. All these acts we would be looking after the 2 features. The first one is the significance of the act. What is the significance of this particular act? And the other one is the various features or the rules laid down by those acts. So you can expect at your prelims level in UPSC questions from both these features, the significance from the significance portion of the act as well as from the features of the act. And if you will go through the various previous year question papers of your UPSC prelims, you will find questions from both significance as well as features of all these acts. So let's discuss at first what are the significance of this act, that is the Regulating Act of 1773. The first and the primary significance of this act is it is the first step taken by the British government to control and regulate. First step taken by the British government to control and regulate the affairs of the English East India Company by the British government the affairs of the English East India Company in India. This is the primary significance of this act. Before this act, no other act were framed in order to control and regulate the affairs of the English East India Company in India. So it is the first step taken by the British government, or you can say the British Parliament as well. And what are the other significances? It is for the first time the British Parliament recognized both the political as well as the economic functions of the company. The British government recognized for the first time the political and administrative the British government recognized for the first time the political and administrative functions of the company. Because before 1765, as we all know, the British English East India Company was merely behaving as an economic entity, as a merchandise, as traders. After 1765, when the Mughal Emperor Shah Alam gave Diwani of Bengal, Bihar and Odisha to the English East India Company, their political functions started shaping out. So, through the Regulating Act of 1773, the British government recognized for the first time about the political as well as the administrative functions of the company. The third most important significant, which have been asked also in previous year papers, if you will go through them, you will find them, it is an asked question, that this act laid the foundations. This act, the Regulating Act of 1773, laid foundations of central administration in India. The foundations for central administration over India was laid down by this Regulating Act of 1773. This question has been previously asked. So now we would be moving on to look at the features. One by one we would be looking about the features that were present in the Regulating Act of 1770. So in features section, the very first feature of this act is it designated the Governor of Bengal as the Governor of Bengal was designated as the Governor General of Bengal. The Governor of Bengal was designated as the Governor General of Bengal, and an Executive Council of 4 members, was created to assist the Governor General of Bengal. Unlike previously 3 British strongholds were present, British governors were present in India, one at Bengal, other one at Madras, and the third one at Bombay. In these 3 places, the British governors were present. All the 3 governors prior to this act were independent from each other. But with the passage of the Regulating Act of 1773, the governors of Bombay and Madras, were become subordinate to the governor of Bengal, and the governor of Bengal, his designation was changed to Governor General of Bengal. So the governors of Bombay and Madras provinces were made subordinate to the Governor General of Bengal. This was another significant feature of this act, and this is also an asked question. It is a previous year question. This one is also a previous year question. And the central administration, look, this is the central administration. These two features, they justify this point, the significance that which we have discussed earlier, that is, this act laid the foundations of central administration in India. Look, they, Governor General, their independency was destroyed and they were made subordinate, hence vesting all the central administrative powers upon the Governor General of Bengal. Now, what are the other provisional features of this regulating act? It provided for an establishment of a Supreme Court. And as you all know, Supreme Court under British was established in 1774 at Calcutta with one Chief Justice and 3 other judges. You will read in detail about it in your history things. We need not go into depth of this, the various law commissions and all, we will read about it in history. The other important aspect or feature of this act, it prevented, let's write it prevented, it prevented the servants of the company, it prohibited the servants of the company from engaging in private trade, as well as accepting bribes from the natives. This act prohibited the servants of the company from engaging in private trade as well as accepting bribes from the natives. The company officials in the meantime, they had grown very, very corrupt. Even Lord Cornwallis raised the pay of civil servants in India to such an extent that at a particular time, the Indian civil servants were the highest paid officials in entire world. So to curb this corruption of the officials only, Lord Cornwallis raised the pay hike to such an extent. So it was the first time that the British Parliament started prohibiting its servants, that is the servants of the company, from engaging in private trade as well as accepting bribes. This is bribes, don't read it bribes, okay? It's from accepting bribes from the natives. So these are all the significance as well as the features of the Regulating Act of 1773. With this, it completes the Regulating Act of 1773. These are the previous year questions. And remember one more thing which I have forgotten here, Lord Warren Hastings. Lord Warren Hastings was the first Governor General of Bengal. Okay, so we have completed the Regulating Act of 1773. Now we will be looking into the second important act, that is the Pitt's India Act of 1784. So the next act we are going to discuss now is Pitt's India Act in the year 1784. So Pitt's India Act, why the name Pitt? Why is it known as Pitt's India Act? Because it was introduced in the British Parliament Pitt's India Act was introduced in the British Parliament by the then PM, the then British PM, that is the Prime Minister, William Pitt. William Pitt, who was the British Prime Minister in 1784, he introduced this act in the British Parliament. Hence, this act came to be known as the Pitt's India Act of 1784. As usual, we would be discussing the significance as well as the features of this act as well. So what are the significances of this act? This act mostly has two wide significance. A previous year question has also been asked in the UPSC from one of its significances. So the two most widely significance of this act is the first one being the British possessions in India this term was used for the very first time with reference to the company's territories in India. The East India Company, which had gained political rights, were the territories over which it was exercising its rights, mainly over the Bengal, Bihar and Odisha states, present day Bengal, Bihar and Odisha states. So those states or the territories that the company possessed were known as the company's territories in India previously till 1784. After 1784, after the passage of the Pitt's India Act of 1784, the company's territories in India was started to be named as the British possessions in India. For the first time ever, the company's territories in India were known as the British possessions in India. And the second most important, this is a previous year question, remember it, that from where on the company's territories in India were known as the British possessions in India from 1784 after the passage of the Pitt's India Act of 1784. And the second important thing, significance of this act is it established supreme control of the British government. Supreme control of British government over the affairs of the company. This act started giving the British government supreme authority over the affairs of the English East India Company. Another significance is it introduced double government in India. Widely, the introduction of double government has been attributed to the system of diarchy, which you might have read while reading modern Indian history, or you will read while reading modern Indian history. But the Pitt's India Act of 1784 has introduced the double government system in India. How? We would look into that through the features of this act. So now let's look at the features of this Pitt's India Act of 1780. For the first time, this act segregated the commercial and political functions of the company. Commercial and political functions of the company were differentiated or distinguished. Pitt's India Act of 1784 distinguished between the commercial and political functions of the company. It empowered the Court of Directors to look after. Court of Directors were empowered to look after the commercial affairs of the company. Commercial affairs of the company. It created a new body, the Board of Control, to look after the political affairs of the company. Political affairs of company. Remember, company here signifies to the English East India Company, nothing else. English East India Company. So the Pitt's India Act of 1784, it created a new body. This is a new body, the Board of Control, just to look after the political affairs of company. It distinguished between the commercial and political functions of the company. It created a new body, Board of Control, in order to look after the political affairs of the company. Hence, this provision gave rise to the system of double government in India. Court of Directors to look after the commercial affairs, Board of Control to look after the political affairs, gave rise to the system of double government in India. Further, the Board of Control were empowered to supervise and direct all functions of civil and military governments. The Board of Control was given empowered to supervise and direct all functions of civil as well as military governments, and revenues of British possessions in India. So the newly formed Board of Control has three functions. One is to look after the political affairs of the company, to look after, supervise and direct the civil and military governments, and to look after the revenues of the British possessions in India. So these are all the things that we have to study in the Pitt's India Act of 1784. Its significances, the previous year question, and the features of the Pitt's India Act. Moving on, we will discuss about the chapter acts, The Charter Act of 1833 we would discuss next. So the next act is Charter Act. Charter Act of 1833. What is the significance of the Charter Act of 1833? What is the significance? The final step towards centralization. It is the final step towards the centralization of British India. Centralization reached its peak through this act, that is the Charter Act of 1833. So how was it obtained? How centralization's final step was obtained? For that we need to look at the various features that are being provided in the Charter Act. So the first feature is the Governor General of Bengal was now designated as the Governor General of India. Governor General of Bengal was now designated as Governor General of India. Further, the governors of Bombay and Madras provinces were deprived of their legislative powers. Were deprived of their legislative powers. So, as we have discussed earlier in the Regulating Act of 1773, the Governor General of Bengal designated was as the Governor General of Bengal, and the governors of Bombay and Madras provinces were made subordinate to the Governor General of Bengal. Hence, we called then that the process of centralization of British India had begun through the Regulating Act of 1773. And through the Charter Act of 1833, the process of centralization reached its peak. The Governor General of Bengal has been redesignated as Governor General of India. Lord William Bentinck was the first Governor General of India. Lord Warren Hastings was the first Governor General of Bengal, and Lord William Bentinck was the first Governor General of India. And further, the governors of Bombay and Madras provinces, they were deprived of their legislative powers. Hence, the centralizing tendency of the British government was at its peak. Further, one of the important features of this act, that is the Charter Act of 1833, was it ended the commercial activities of the East India Company. The commercial activities of the English East India Company has been ended by the Charter Act of 1833. Hence, the English East India Company remained as purely an administrative body. Purely an administrative body. One of the other features of the Charter Act of 1833 was that the Act proposed for an open competition for recruiting the civil servants It proposed to allow Indians also to enter into the British civil services, but the board of control, they opposed to it, the court of directors opposed to it, hence that cannot be worked out. So these are the three most important features of the Charter Act of 1833. After this, we are going to discuss about the Charter Act of 1853, and it would be the last one of our discussion. So the Charter Act of 1853. What are its significances? It has two significances. Let's learn them. Significance. The Charter Act of 1853 was the last of the series of Charter Acts, passed by the British Parliament between 1793 to 1853. Between 1793 to 1853, the British Parliament passed a series of Charter Acts, and the Charter Act of 1853 was the last of them. Further, another important significance of this act was legislation for the first time was treated as a special function. One of the important significance is legislation for the first time was treated as a special function of the government. Special function of the government. How? Because it separated between the legislative and executive functions of the Governor General of India. The Charter Act of 1833, it had designated the Governor General of Bengal as the Governor General of India, and the Charter Act of 1853 separated the legislative and the executive functions of the Governor General of India. Hence, its significance, one of its significance is legislation for the first time was regarded as a special function of the government through the Charter Act of 1853. So now, after the significances got over, let's move on to look at the various features that are being provided in this Charter Act of 1853. So now let's look at the various features of the Charter Act of 1853. As I have told during the significances, separated the legislative and executive functions of the Governor General of India. It provided for an establishment of a separate legislative council known as the Central Legislative Council or the Indian Legislative Council. This central or the Indian Legislative Council has provisions for local representation. Local representation was made. It had in total 6 members. The Central Legislative Council was consisted of 6 members, out of which 4 were of Indian origin. 4 members from India, were placed in the Central Legislative Council consisting of 6 members. Hence, it paved the way for local representation in the legislative functions in British governance. Further, as I have told you that the Charter Act of 1833 made an attempt to recruit Indians into civil services, but it failed in its attempt. But the Charter Act of 1853 made it a successful. The Charter Act of 1853 throwed open the covenanted civil services, to Indians. Indians were allowed for recruitment through the civil services. This provision was made by the Charter Act of 1853. It enhanced the local representation. It separated the legislative as well as the executive functions of the Governor General's Council. It threw open all the covenanted civil services to Indians. With this, we came to the end of the historical background of our Indian Constitution. All the other acts that are of significance, you will cover it up in the modern Indian history. Post 1857, the next one is Government of India Act of 1858. You will read all of it, the Moorlamento reforms, the diarchy, everything, the Indian Independence Act, the Simon Commission, all of it you are going to read it in the modern Indian history. Hence, in polity section, we will not be discussing them in order to save time. After all, if you are a true aspirant, if you are a serious aspirant, you understand the value of time and how much precious time is for you. So let's not waste more time in discussing them here. We will discuss them in the modern Indian history classes. So if you like this video, if you like StudGenie, if you feel that this is good enough, please make sure that you comment and make us know. Please like this video, please share this video, and if you want to be a part of our live classes, please visit our website. The website is visible to you now. Please visit the website, the link of which is visible in the comment section, which has been mentioned in the comment section of this video. Go to the website and register yourself for the upcoming live classes of StudGenie. We would be very grateful to have you in the live classes where we can discuss the details of polity, economics, current affairs and all and also.